Hey there, so this is me again, Struppi, and today I know I promised to make a video about the vector equilibrium soon, and that's very high on my list. I really want to go into that as well as into the other basics of synergetics, but maybe before that a little more food for thought, because why does this even matter? In my last videos I went into the deconstruction of what we call the Platonic solids and how they are not a valid category, because some of them matter really and some don't, and everyone is familiar with that sentence. Like, yeah, whenever we talk about these shapes, the first one that everyone recognizes is the cube, and usually people say, yeah, this is the cube, everyone knows it. And I'm not sure everyone really knows it, because this is a cube and it's not really a thing unless you triangulate it. So yeah, another problem with it is, okay, this is a octops, what they call octahedron, 8 eyes, and this is actually the same stuff, the same 12 straws and the same string, just another pattern of putting them together. Well, why is this a problem? The conventional idea of space, where time is not part of the picture, the one that everyone is familiar with X, Y, and Z, and so-called 3 dimensions and cubes and all that, is really absolutely invalid if you think about this. Now let's put a cube. We could take one that is more triangulated than this, one that actually holds its shape. You're familiar with them. Let's look at a house or something. You look at that house and everyone conventionally considers the sides of it to be part of 2 categories. You either have the vertical lines, these ones, or the horizontals going that way. And we're very convinced that this is a proper way to talk about these, and we look at those lines and we even say that the horizontals are parallel and the verticals are parallel. Now, why is this problematic? Because actually we are living in a universe where everything is spherical. Everything tends to be spheres interacting, and the idea of having cubic space where you have parallel sides and all this is a bit contradictory, because if you consider that cube on the Earth, sitting on the Earth, and we look at it and we say, okay, those lines going up and down are verticals. How do you define a vertical? How do you measure it? What you take is a string with a weight, and I'm not quite sure how you call that in English. In German it's a Lot, maybe a, yeah, I'm not sure, sorry. You might know what I mean. Basically just a weight on a string, and you drop that, and where does it point? It points down, conventionally. But if you consider down that way, and we're living on a sphere, now if I walk around the sphere, then my down still points down. Now if the sphere is as big as the Earth, you could think that moving a bit here and there, those vertical lines are in fact parallel. But truly, where do they point? that weight is always pulled towards the center of gravity of the Earth, which means that wherever you drop that weight on the Earth, now I wish I had it, this tripod for my phone. You see, I'm not a very professional filmmaker, I apologize. Imagine this is the Earth being a sphere. Now if I drop my weight here, it points into the Earth center, and if I walk around, it still does point into the Earth center, all the way up to the bottom, to the opposite side of the Earth, where it still points to the inside of the Earth. So in fact, every vertical is a radius, and being a radius, no two verticals can be parallel, because even if you move only just slightly, like a few centimeters apart, those two radii, if you extend them out from the Earth, they will diverge, and they will never be parallel. They can't be. Even the opposite direction, if you go 180 degrees, it could be considered parallel, but it's really the opposite direction. Okay, so that leaves us with the other category, the horizontals. And how do we define horizontals? Well, if you build a house, you take a level, which is basically a tool with a bit of water and a bubble in it, a bubble of air. Now, what do we know about the behavior of water? If it's a very small bit of water, it will always pull itself together towards a sphere, making a droplet, or a bubble, or something like that. If you look at that air bubble inside the water in your level, even though it's a bit squashed because it's inside a cylinder, it still tends to be a sphere, a ball. And if the mass of your droplet gets too big, if it's water, then eventually the tension, the surface tension, which is essentially the same thing as gravity, is not strong enough anymore to counteract the gravitational force pulling towards the center of the Earth. So essentially the droplet bursts and looks for the shortest way possible to get to the next bigger sphere, be that a puddle or a lake or the ocean. So what I'm saying is, what we measure with our level, the horizontals, are really just minute parts of a big arc, of a big spherical arc, actually, because it's essentially we're measuring the around the Earth with the level. With the vertical, we're going in and out. That's two directions, and then with the level, the horizontal, we go around. But given the fact that even a tiny bit of that arc is still part of that arc, you can't have a straight level. A horizontal is always bent, which means it's terribly complicated to make a cube in any scale that really is parallel, made up of arc segments and vertices, or verticals being radii. So what I'm saying is, essentially the idea behind the discussion that we see in this world. There's so many important discussions, but there's also that really fringe discussion between people believing in science and people believing in something else, who say, yeah, the Earth is flat. Turns out, if you believe that space is three-dimensional and cubic, you basically define by that assumption the Earth as being flat, because otherwise it can't be. You can't have cubic three-dimensional space on a on the surface of a sphere. And that's something that Buckminster Fuller pointed out in synergetics, and all of his subsequent discoveries of generalized principles of synergetics have that as their starting point, because he realized, okay, the geometers, they were metering the earth, geos. So for them it was perfectly reasonable to think, oh look, the trees, they go perpendicular to the earth, so they are vertical, and the earth is flat and all that rubbish. But really, how can we still believe in that? It's time that people make up their minds and realize that this is not the shape of space. This is not a form even, this is a transform. And looking at the earth in this way, where everything is by itself based on spheres and circles and thus triangles, this gives you structures, this gives you time spaces that are dynamic. This is really essentially the marriage of what we think of paradoxically as something that is not possible to be in the same thing, which is a wave and a particle. Because this is a particle, this is a macrocosmic particle that I arrived at by knotting together a wave of string. So the duality of that is really not paradoxical, and it's not complicated. It's not even... It's only complicated if your framework is complicated and irrational like this. And just today I saw a video of one of the students of the Jane 108 Academy, and I really like what he's doing. I like Jane's approach to teaching geometry to children and people and having them play with these things. But alas, he, like pretty much everyone else, still seems to believe in the reason, in the existence of the three-dimensional space. And when they play with 4 dimensions, they go into tesseracts where they do this thing even more complicated, without even realizing that in the end the cube will always exhibit characteristics of the tetra and the octa and these things, because that's really what it's describing very clumsily. And it's no wonder that even the model that you saw on Jane's video of that kid that played with it, looking for time traveling and folding space, that kid was playing with a cubic setup made of sticks with spheres in the corners where you could put the sticks in, and they would hold them. But even like that, even having those connectors holding them, you could see that the cubic arrangement they set up was still shaky and wavy, and it's this is the true nature of the cube. And if you don't realize that it's not really a thing, then you have been fooled by the same lies that have us trapped since the ancient times. And I'm sorry to say it like that, because I really don't want to offend anyone by that. It's just something that I used to believe in as well, and now I'm trying to tell people that really think about it again, make your own conclusions, or maybe look at what some people have already looked into, and yeah, take a look into synergetics. It might really shift your perspectives and your perception of the world. Take care, stay safe, and love one another, and let's change this world for a better. Bye bye.